I had a couple videos from a dude named the Japan Reporter. These had to do with Japan's poverty and distrust in politics and the rising and Japan's rise of enjoying solitude. So these two videos kind of have to do with the themes of like loneliness and politics and in Japan, and also I've been getting suggested like a lot of, well, probably just because I've been watching more Japanese style videos, but a lot of people talking about how lonely they are, yo. Every country has different reasons for its poverty, but what are the main causes in Japan? So yeah, we're kind of learning about this, tricky situation in Ohio with immigrants and poverty. Their poverty in Japan, since they are a monoculture, mostly Japanese people, they don't have so much problem with immigration, like the stresses you could say from immigration, even though they probably need to come up with some good ideas or plans because of their sinking birth rate, so they need to figure out how to keep their economy and stuff going. But more importantly, why do we still let it be even though it's clearly worsening with the falling birth rate? So poverty, birth rate, why don't half of us even go to vote? So it almost seems like, and how do we still improve the birth rate? So that's obviously some interesting topics because they've been in the news in the United States. But Japan has like a really low birth rate. And they kind of have the opposite problem where, in our country, we have a lot of immigration happening. And it's leading to poverty. But then you have situations where there's not enough immigration and they're still being impoverished. So I'm just interested in see what I can learn about maybe some of the causes of these kinds of situations. So let's see. This is a video from the Japan Reporter. Here is his channel. I'll just put a link. Japan's poverty and distrust in politics.
Poverty has been rising, especially among the young, for the three big reasons according to a book I've recently read. Just like the US, college is more and more expensive, while scholarships not available much yet.
Okay, so it looks like he's talking about education costs at first. He's just talking really fast. But yeah, so one potential reason might be rising college prices, tuition.
Many young people shoulder student loans, and their wages not nearly enough to start a family. Companies being increased.
Okay, so students graduating from college are not finding jobs that are able to pay enough for them to start managing a family, so that affects birth rates.
The percentage of non-regular ones for this decade, so that they could cut down their labor costs. But from a worker's perspective, this is quite hard.
Okay, so non-regular employment, meaning little low? Okay. So it seems like because companies are trying to cut costs, they are trying to kind of modify the job positions that they offer so something kind of irregular. Oh, and so because they create so many non-regular kind of positions just to fill in these like little gaps, they don't always need these jobs, and so they're easily letting go a lot of people, and so it's an unstable position. It's like being only able to have like a part-time job, and you don't ever be able to make enough money to support a family, and because you really can't even rely on that job for an extended amount of time, which is actually very unlike Japan. That's why I think they're calling them non-traditional or unstable or whatever they said. Usually when you get a job in Japan, from what I understand, the job is something you, like if you work for a big company, like that's like a lifetime job. Like you're not encouraged, or you're not incentivized to leave the job because the corporations will give you so much benefits and things like that in order to keep you there. Okay.
As the population is aging, more and more young people have to quit full-time jobs and work part-time to take care of their parents, so that their income gets down. Anyway, even though this poverty...
Okay, so aging society. So it seems like what he's saying is that because so many parents are becoming older and older, when their children hit a certain age, the children start taking care of the parents. So that means they have less time to be able to work, or they spend all their money caring for their parents and thus don't have enough left over to start their own family. And it seems like also if more and more people get caregiver kind of jobs, even if they get a job doing caregiving, it seems like that kind of job, because it doesn't actually produce anything, doesn't actually create more income. It kind of, you end up allocating more towards a kind of like a vacuum. You know what I'm trying to say? Because no production is, it's like usually people who are older, a lot of these caregiver places, they're either relying on their government, you know, Japan equivalent of Social Security or whatever, but it's not actually a job that produces something. So it doesn't replace money. Inverted triangle population phenomenon. Yeah. I think I know a little bit about that.
Clearly equals the
But yeah, so non-regular. Everything goes to shit, basically.
Even worse. Many people say the government doesn't seem to put the focus on them much.
So the problems are obvious, but the government isn't willing to fix it. But I think what he's going to say, based on the description, is that are people voting? Or maybe they stop voting because they feel like the government doesn't even listen.
Obviously, like, problems to me, like lack of daycare, the working hours are too long, the salaries are too low, but the price of everything is increasing. Who would want to have a child? How do you raise a family on salary that hasn't risen in 30 years? It's hard, right?
ギリギリの活発の子たちにチャンスあげた方が、俺の工場でも周りにいっぱいいるしさ、給与が少ないチャンスがもらえない。晩婚遅れてしちゃうとさ、その子供がじゃあ1年後。
Okay, so this dude feels like as a factory worker, he doesn't get a high enough rate of pay, and that means he has to save up money for longer, which means he has to wait to have a family at a later age. And the older you get, you might not be young enough to raise the children well, which kind of then all of a sudden your children are helping you, and it's that much harder for them to get on their feet, and that cycle keeps continuing on through the generations. And yeah, okay, that's what he's saying, yeah.
But despite of what he said, he's not trusting the government and doesn't expect they could make the situation better.
So hopelessness in the government. He doesn't even think the government cares about the country. Nothing changes.
Many people also feel the same way and giving up on the government and don't even feel like going to vote.
So they have a similar thing where a great portion of the population doesn't feel like voting does anything. They feel like the government isn't listening. And that's very similar to United States situation. You know, we're very divided in our country. So it's like, I wonder what will happen. Obviously, so Japanese is completely different culturally, so how they're responding to that similar situation is obviously different. But is there going to become a great split, or is it just people gonna just be tuning out? You know what I'm trying to say? I feel like maybe people just more and more people just tune out. It seems like that, because at least in the United States, I mean, I say at least, but there's controversy. There's like a lot of infighting between. It's almost, you know, the left and the right are very much conflicting and at odds with each other. So they're like, each is incentivized to kind of like speak up about what they believe in, right? But if you don't really if you're not used to speaking up in a culture like Japan, which, you know, a lot of people keep their opinions to themselves for the sake of social harmony. The downside to that is that everyone feels like something should be done, but no one really wants to step up and get something done. You know what I mean? Like, because they don't want to be the odd man out. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. Doesn't matter who becomes the prime minister. Except what's wild is, wasn't there, I mean, didn't Prime Minister, what was his name? He was a prime minister during the time of when George Bush was president here. What's his name? He was assassinated. They literally had somebody go up and you know, game in this guy right in a public place like a year or two ago. So I wonder what's really going on over there, you know? Look at this. The reason why they have this, I bet, is because of the very real threat of their leaders being taken out, which is just horrible.
変わったことがあったっけと思ったってないんですよね。
Dude, maybe they don't even feel like they can stand up because that guy, what's his name? I gotta pull it up now. I gotta pull it up. Yeah, Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe. Yeah, Raimondo. Yeah, you said it. Shinzo Abe. This dude, I think he was more of a conservative leader in Japan, right? I think he was kind of moving towards re-entering politics as more of like a populist type of candidate, similar to Donald Trump. I'm not 110% sure if he was going to the extreme route of Donald Trump, but he was definitely, I think, going to start appealing more to populism, and they offed that guy, you know? So I wonder if that put a chill factor into this situation.
政府が少子化対策とか言ってやってるようなことって
Okay, so he's talking about declining fertility and government policies being
言うわけじゃないですか、少子化。で
infertile.
理由はわかるじゃないですか、僕ら別に聞かなくたって。
Look
わ
at
ざわざ行かないですよ。
who bothers going to
Some
vote.
Japanese people trusting the government and claims that more people,
So the young people are shunning politics, leaving power with the elderly.
should go to vote, as the burden on the young may gonna get even bigger.
自分はこの10年間毎回言ってるんですけど、友達とか
Nobita.
みんな行きたくないって。自分はもっと
This guy's the one who runs the channel. This is his channel.
信用してもいいんじゃないかなっていうふうに思ってます。もちろん優秀で国を愛してる人もいる。
So basically, this dude's been voting for the last 10 years, and he feels like young people should not give up voting, and they should not give up putting their voice into government. He says maybe there are some good politicians, and he wants to believe that they could change for the better.
But most young people I talk to say the opposite and claims that we still
Voting
can't
wouldn't make
rely
things
on
better in
the government.
Japan.
結局その今じゃあ投票に行こう。
Even me, Christopher,
確かに投票も大事かもしれないんですけど、政治家が解決できないからこそ今この状況が広がってるんじゃないのっていうのが、まあ今若者が抱えてる課題ってもちろんいろんな問題があると思うんですけど、7割
Raimondo, I agree with you, but it seems like they are 70, 80% of us.
何かしら生活苦しい。
Okay, that's a lot of people. Dude, yeah, dang. But I wonder what we'll be able to get Japanese people to kind of be reinvigorated to kind of vote again. Like, what kind of change in their perception? Maybe part of the trouble again is that they're unwilling to vote for a controversial politician. Maybe and because even though they would like to, they probably don't do it for social reasons, you know? Maybe, I don't know. But maybe they got to just understand the situation. Dang, that's a tough situation.
解決できるならしたらいいと思うんですけど、そうじゃない。
よく投票率が低いと関心が低いって言われちゃうんですけど、アンケートなんかを取ると割と日本の若者こんなことが問題
So they're aware of the social issues young people are, but
そこに関心は
or they're interested in them,
それとその投票
but it doesn't lead to going to vote. Okay?
信頼感っていうのがやっぱり日本の方が低いですよね。
Huh.
何が違うのみたいな話が
Look at them.
それが結構なんか一番違うかなと思います。だからなんか会話が生まれないかっていうところですかね。やっぱり日本だと政治家になる人ってもう自分たちの世界とはかけ離れている人に見えていて、だからそういう人
That's something I've heard about Japanese government is it's so heavily bureaucratic that it takes forever for policy changes to occur. And I guess that's one of the ways that Japan kind of insulates itself from foreign influence, to be honest, because yeah, anyway, I'll just say that.
たちがやっている政治ってすごく遠いものに
やっぱり冷めた目で見ちゃいますね、いろんなことをね。なんかこの人たちどうせあと10年後にはいないんだよねみたいな人たち
Yo?
一生懸命なんか今後の日本とか言われても
もうこれは完全に選挙制度にあると思っていまして、
Okay. The electoral system itself?
そして世襲であったりとか、
Okay.
強い政党に入っている方々が当選してくると。
So they seem to have a similar situation to the United States where it's the establishment politicians are so entrenched that it's hard for newcomers to be elected.
やはり日本って
So that's really what you need is you need a Trump-like figure over there, yo. But see, that's Trump's the Trump personality is something very, very American. For Japan to have somebody like that would be very controversial in their country. I mean, obviously, look how it's very American to have a guy like Trump, but at the same time, like so many Americans are, easily fed up with that guy, you know? So imagine what that would be like in Japan. I mean, crazy. Yeah. So Raimondo says that in his country, young people do not trust the old political parties and the blocks that they have formed. But when new parties appeared about 6 years ago, young people voted again for these two parties. Okay, yeah. So yeah. I think that's exactly what you're saying is what Japan kind of needs to realize is that maybe Japanese young people need to actually be the ones to step up and organize themselves and find out some things that they can commonly believe on. And just, but you know, again, hopefully they just need to be able to find the time because it seems like they're overworked and not making enough money. But yeah, yeah. Huge money and risk to run for an election. That's yeah.
賃金が上がったりとか安全な職場が用意されるのかって言ったらそうじゃない。投票っていうのが早稲田には見えるんですけど、そうじゃなくて、私の立場からすると、そういう疑問が出てくるわけです。
But yeah, it almost seems don't give up. Remember, never give up. You know what I mean? That old meme, like Japan, the young people, don't give up. Vote. Or at least start talking about stuff. You know, talk about what matters to you and address these things even amongst yourselves. Maybe that's too hard, but I don't know. I don't think so.
Some of the politicians in Japan don't even acknowledge it and claims that young people already happy today.
I bet you. Okay. Oh wait, I think this guy's a controversial guy in Japan. Actually, he says really off-the-wall things. So he's a very non-traditional kind of politician, from what I understand. So let's see what he says. Half of Japan's voters don't even go to vote. You need to think why they don't. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that's a good point, is that because things are so comfortable in Japan right now, young people are just like, they're kind of lulled into complacency, you know? They don't really feel the danger of having like a low birth rate. Like that's something you don't, like that's something that's going to hit when all of a sudden all their parents are going to be, I mean, I guess it is already happening, but so there must be movements like this in Japan, but they must be small. For example, Japanese feminist movement is tiny over there. Yeah, I don't personally think feminism itself is the answer, but I do think that something needs to be, the pot needs to be stirred over there. Maybe it will take some kind of like non-traditional thing like that to kind of start raising its voice in order for more and more people to start, you know, you got to start somewhere, I guess. So anyway, what was I going to say about this? I forgot. Okay, so our constitution engagement. Yeah, so there's certain complacency that seems apparent. I mean, look how beautiful that area is. Like, have you just seen those videos where people just take a GoPro, 4K GoPro, and they just go walk around the cities? Like, Japan does such a good job of maintaining everything that you don't ever really sense, maybe as a citizen there, I could imagine that maybe you don't ever sense like the dire situation that they're in. As long as you're on welfare, you have a secure life forever. In the late Showa period, actually, I learned what the Showa period was. I think it's like early 1900s to the 1980s, I think. And I think I learned it from that other YouTuber I was mentioning earlier named Shika, the Japanese one, who talked about Grave of the Fireflies. Anyway, whatever. So when they say Showa period, they're talking about the period from like up to the 1980s, from like the late 1900s to up to the 1980s, before the bubble burst. Young people don't even try to seek wealthy things. But yeah, they all, maybe they just retreated, yo. They just retreated into the Matrix. Sounds like me when I was at Starbucks. I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to go promote. I wanted to go home. Yeah, young people are happy now. Yeah.
なくても
Damn.
楽しめる。大金持ちになってね、贅沢に海外旅行したり高級車に乗ったりという願望さえ持たなければすごい。
That could be said even here in the United States. Even me, I'm identifying with that. I don't know.
ハッピーに暮らせるから不満はあるけど、選挙行ったり
We're basically like, we have this culture that's, you know, through the internet that's just being served to us on like a platter, right? And like, it's so easy just to feel connected, right? With online stuff, that we kind of leave the real world aside. And which is interesting because in Japan, hikikomori, or like social withdrawal, is like it's like literally like a psychological condition or maybe behavioral condition of a lot of people, a lot of young people in Japan. Anyway,
暴動するほどではないんです。
kind of just tuning out.
他の国の若者っていうのは本当に差し迫った生活の危険があるから行くしかない。
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So in other countries, he's saying that in other countries, you know, they live in more dangerous environment, so voting is, you know, part of, you know, they sense their life in danger, so they go out and they vote. But they don't sense the danger in Japan because it's kind of, yeah, everything seems happy on the surface.
それは別に何かしたいからなんですよ。遊ぶことを優先してるから子供産めないよって言ってるだけなんです。アフリカ
It's
に
kind of self-sufficient or
お金がないから
self-focused.
子供産めないなんて言わないじゃないですか。昭和初期とか大正の頃はお金がないから子供産まないなんてありえないじゃないですか。今よりも圧倒的に
Interesting.
少子化対策の一番の効果は国民を貧しくすれば少子化対策は解消される。だからお金がないから子供産まないって言ってる人たちこそ。
So yeah, so he's talking about how in Africa they have kids all the time and they don't think anything about, you know, poverty being something to hold them back from having kids. Even in early 1900s Japan, it seems like everybody was poor, but they were still having kids. So that excuse is just not the same today, or like that excuse didn't have merit back then. So why should it have merit today? Somehow, you know. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of sophisticated things to contradict, you know, oh, it was bad. Anyway, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. Whatever. Let's see what more of these guys have to say. So maybe it's a type of brainwashing. Was that it? Wait, what? What?
Poverty's been like.
Was that it? Oh, yeah, it just ended like that. So he just ends. We'd rather make, he says, those who say we can't have kids without incomes, they're brainwashed. There must be moves like that in Japan. I don't think that's the reason. Did I misunderstand this dude? This guy is very controversial, I think, in Japan, political leader. Yeah, I can't have children because I'm broke. Back in the day, they didn't say that. So I think, did I miss something? So we want to increase the fertility rate. We'd rather make our citizens poorer. Well, okay, that's a weird way to put it. Those who say we can't have kids. Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? The whole people in Africa keep having kids, even if they're poor, because they aren't pregnant. Yeah, see. Yeah, it is a weird situation. I think there's definitely, it's a controversial statement to put it like that, but maybe he is kind of trying to point something out by using a controversial statement, similar to JD Vance saying they're eating the cats and dogs in Ohio. But I think there is a degree of truthfulness. I wouldn't necessarily say that this would apply to Africa, because Africa is just so poor. I think there's other issues that are the case. But it is kind of crazy how Africa has an insane birth rate, right? But the thing I was going to say that is understandable is I think to a degree, the idea that you can't have kids till later is a certain level of brainwashing. In more first world countries with declining birth rates, it does seem like it's maybe brainwashing isn't the right word, but there's definitely like a propaganda or a messaging out there that says don't have kids, you know, and there's all these reasons why you shouldn't have kids. And yet, if we don't have kids, the society is going to collapse, right? population collapse. And that's something like Elon Musk talks a lot about on X. But anyway, what's interesting is that I think to his point is that being poor was never a reason in the past about why someone could not have children. Like they wouldn't be like, oh, okay, I can't have kids, because back in the day, I guess you would have kids because children were like a way to expand wealth in a certain sense. But that's because of a different kind of lifestyle where there was more rural. So you had more, like for instance, you had more hands on the farm. You know, you had more hands in the family to be able to like run the farm or run a ranch or whatever. And I'm just thinking of like places that have like a farm kind of background, I guess, you know, like the United States or even parts of Europe, parts of Russia, or Eastern Europe. Even, well, Africa is not really what I'm talking about. But anyway, there is a degree of truth to the notion that because people are more self-centered nowadays, they'd rather just be playing their video games. I've even thought about this. I'm like, dang, man, if I were to have kids, there are many things that I would have to give up in order to be able to focus on them. And I don't know if I want to focus, or I don't know if I want to give up those things. And when I take note of that within myself, I'm like, oh, damn, that's kind of selfish of myself. But then you always hear the stories about people who just end up having kids, and they feel like, dude, having kids was actually way better than anything I was doing before that. Now, obviously, there's always going to be some people who don't think that, and they literally don't care about their kids, and they're just going to still try to be selfish and do their own thing despite having kids, and then their kids grow up thinking exactly the same way. Yeah, so before, people had more support networks to raise children. Family, dude, I think you're so right about that, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Because, yeah, even the examples of the young people that, you know, the things that I have in my head all have to do with internet connectivity in a certain sense, which kind of takes the place of actual interpersonal connectivity with your neighbors and stuff like that. Like, how often do you know your neighbors? And I think that's what this next video that I want to talk about is probably going to talk about. Oh, wait, hold on. Is it this? The Japan's rise of enjoying solitude. So I think that's why I wanted to watch these videos together, was because more people are just enjoying their alone time. But if they do that, then the social networks that people normally had, like you're pointing out, Raimundo, those social networks break down. And when they break down, the only cohesion to society would be like an outside, like the government itself, right? So if the government is the social cohesion for a society, maybe that's why Japan society is bifurcating, like between the managerial class and the normal society, because they're just like, there isn't really any human connection anymore. You know what I'm trying to say? So the bureaucrats just run the machine, and the people are fine with it as long as basic things are getting met. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And now everyone wants to turn 18 and leave home and live in a super expensive apartment on minimum wage, and then they complain that they can't afford to have a child. Yeah, that's a good point. As if our parents and grandparents didn't live. Yeah, I know. It's honestly like even white people's families in this country, you know, like it just seemed like more and more that idea that came to be on American TV of like the parents and the kids, and then that was it. But even there was like what other family shows, like what was the one with the really big family from the 70s, the nuclear family? Yeah. But there was one. Anyway, I guess long story short, what I'm trying to say is eventually the messaging, like how often do white American families like actually keep their parents living with them, you know, or keep their grandchildren living with them, you know? It's like, it's so rare. And like you're saying, like most teenagers, when the time they hit 18, just want to be away from their family. But I just think that like that's not a good thing. Especially, yeah, it's too difficult. It's just more and more difficult. Maybe because of the affluence of like the post-war era, like the 50s, because there was so much extra money right there from the leftovers of the wartime efforts, right? A lot of industry and stuff like that. Jobs were aplenty and money was aplenty, and so it made things possible that ordinarily weren't possible. And so people kind of got used to that. But now that things are starting to get more expensive again and things like that, they're forgetting their family. It's kind of delusional, like the idea of a soul. Yeah, well, the idea of a sole breadwinner. Unfortunately, I think like without that idea, it's really hard to have a family. But I think if you had like multiple people working, like maybe not, I don't think the mom should work, but I think like when you raise kids and have them become adults, you shouldn't just kick them out immediately. You should make your sons get jobs. You know what I'm trying to say? Make your sons get jobs and contribute to the household, because one day that household will be theirs. You know, you'll be able to pass it on to them. So if you had like grandparents, parents, and son and children, and the male figures of those of each generation like still contributing and working outside the house to bring income into the house, the women can run the house. You know what I mean? From a more traditional perspective. I'm not saying you have to be like that, but my opinion is it's probably the best to do it that way. That way your children have someone constantly there who loves them and could give them the proper nurturing and encouragement to be able to one day be be part of the breadwinner. Yeah, sole breadwinner. Yeah, to the degree that only one person in the entire household makes money, I think that is kind of a delusion, because it's kind of founded on like, oh, once you raise your kids, you just kick them out. It's like, no, you should not be kicking your kids out. In fact, I've seen more and more good advice on, for instance, on X and stuff like that, where, to your point about everybody wanting to turn 18 and leave, they say, no, you should actually stay home as long as you can until you're set to with a good house, with a good income. Maybe like your parents could help you save up money to buy your own house if worse comes to worse, or just take advantage, and until you get married and things like that. But you should also be contributing to the house when you're 18 for sure. I definitely think that, because why not? What do? Go pay somebody else to rent their apartment, but not pay your own parents to rent a room from them? Like, come on. Yeah, 100%, Raimondo. That's what I agree with. That's what I think we should do.